Good evening. It's perhaps the most significant statement by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. Prime Minister Modi has articulated India's policy on terror in black and white. If there is terror, then there will be consequences for Pakistan. India has called out Pakistan's nuclear bogey by targeting 9 terror bases and 13 Pakistani air bases and radar stations on the 10th of May. Now, there's also no distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. Watch that image on your television screen. That image clearly shows you there is no distinction between state and non-state actors in Pakistan. There's only one actor, that's the Pakistani state, the Chief of the Army Staff, the DGISI. And they use these so-called non-state actors. They all work as one team, as these images show you. Clearly, Pakistan can no longer pull wool, at least over India's eyes. Pakistan Army officers were present at the funeral of terrorists. There is no distinction. The Prime Minister's red line for Pakistan drawn in Sindoor. That's our top focus story on India First.
22 तारीख के हमले के जवाब में हमने 22 मिनट में आतंकियों के 9 सबसे बड़े ठिकाने तबाह कर दिए। जो सिंदूर मिटाने निकले थे, उन्हें मिट्टी में मिलाया है। पहले घर में घुसकर किया था वार, अब सीधा सीने पर किया प्रहार है। भारत पर आतंकी हमला हुआ तो करारा जवाब मिलेगा। समय हमारी सेनाएं तय करेगी। एटम बम की गीदड़ बप्पियों से भारत डरने वाला नहीं है। हम आतंक के आकाओं और आतंकी सरपरस्त सरकार को अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे। उन्हें अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे, उन्हें एक ही मानेंगे। पाकिस्तान का ये स्टेट और नॉन स्टेट एक्टर वाला खेल अब नहीं चलेगा।
Prime Minister draws new red line for Pakistan.
Keep one thing in mind, Pakistan is a nuclear weapons state, and it took all of 22 minutes once instructions were issued by Prime Minister Narendra Modi for India's armed forces to bring a nuclear weapons state to its knees. Just 22 minutes. That is India's strength. Realize our strength. That is how strong we are. And it wasn't just Pakistan. Do keep in mind, that's a Pakistan that's backed by China. It had Chinese weapons. It had Turkish drones. And India took all of 22 minutes to bring Pakistan, backed by China and Turkey, down to its knees. The Prime Minister was at Nal Air Base in Bikaner. Remember, Pakistan also claimed, apart from Adampur, that it had targeted the Nal Air Base in Bikaner. The Prime Minister made it very clear, our air bases are safe. Then, tongue very firmly in cheek, he said, just check across the border. The Rahim Yar Khan Air Base in Pakistan. It's an ICU. No one knows when Rahim Yar Khan will be operational again. And that's the biggest response to Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. The response first, when you targeted 9 terror camps, including the headquarters of terror at Muridke, Lashkar-e-Taiba headquarters in Muridke. It was unimaginable. And at Bahawalpur, and at Sialkot, and at so many other places, including in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And then 13 air bases of Pakistan and radar stations. That's that line drawn in red. The question is, will Pakistan read this writing on the wall? I'm Gaurav Sawant. We debate. Not blood, but sindoor runs through my veins. That was Prime Minister Narendra Modi's roar at Bikaner, just kilometers away from Jaish-e-Mohammed's headquarters in Bahawalpur, that was decimated in India's precision missile strikes. Now, this was just one instance of the Prime Minister's, perhaps his most aggressive speech on Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. He's defined India's new normal in dealing with Terroristan. This is India's red line drawn in Sindoor. Listen in.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने आतंकवाद से निपटने के 3 सूत्र तय कर दिए हैं। पहला, भारत पर आतंकी हमला हुआ तो करारा जवाब मिलेगा। समय हमारी सेनाएं तय करेगी, तरीका भी हमारी सेनाएं तय करेगी और शर्तें भी हमारी होगी। दूसरा, एटम बम की गीदड़ बप्तियों से भारत डरने वाला नहीं है। तीसरा, हम आतंक के आकाओं और आतंकी सरपरस्त सरकार को अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे, उन्हें अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे, उन्हें एक ही मानेंगे। पाकिस्तान का ये स्टेट और नॉन स्टेट एक्टर वाला खेल अब नहीं चलेगा।
The Prime Minister is articulating India's policy on terror. Is Pakistan reading this writing on the wall? India will no longer be taken in by the nuclear bogey, and that's the biggest question that we're asking here on India Today. Has the Narendra Modi government effectively called out Pakistan's nuclear bogey? The manner in which multiple air bases were targeted, the manner in which Sargodha was targeted, the manner in which Jacobabad, and I'm talking about Noor Khan, Rafiqi, Rahim Yar Khan, Jacobabad, for a reason. All of these are delivery mechanisms and storage points of Pakistan's nuclear weapons and aircraft. The Prime Minister also outlined India's strategic shift in response to terrorism, from restraint to delivering justice. It's not revenge, it's not retaliation or retribution, it's delivering justice. And it started with surgical strikes, then air strikes, and now missile strikes, multiple missile strikes deep inside Pakistan.
पहले घर में घुसकर किया था वार, पहले घर में घुसकर किया था वार, अब सीधा सीने पर किया प्रहार है। आतंक का फन कुचलने की, आतंक का फन कुचलने की यही नीति है, यही रीति है, यही भारत है, नया भारत है।
आतंक का फन कुचलना है. That snake of terror, you have to defang it. And that's exactly what India is doing. He's also made one point very clear, and this perhaps is the biggest nightmare for Pakistan's military terror network, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Bikaner in Rajasthan made it very clear there is no distinction between state and non-state actors in Pakistan. No distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. No distinction between, if I may, between Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen and the Pakistani armed forces. Listen in.
पूरी दुनिया में पाकिस्तान की पोल खोलने के लिए हमारे देश के 7 अलग अलग प्रतिनिधिमंडल पूरे विश्व भर में पहुंच रहे हैं और इसमें देश के सभी राजनीतिक दलों के लोग हैं, विदेश नीति के जानकार हैं, गणमान्य नागरिक हैं। अब पाकिस्तान का असली चेहरा पूरी दुनिया को दिखाया जाएगा।
So let's try and make sense of India's new doctrine on terror. Joining me on this India Today special broadcast is Tilak Deveshar, author, former member of National Security Advisory Board, was also Special Secretary of Research and Analysis Wing, Professor Brahma Chilani, one of India's most respected strategic affairs analysts. Dr. Tara Kartha is former National Security Council Secretariat Director, joins me on the show, and as does my colleague Sandeep Unnithan. And Tilak Deveshar, may I begin by asking you, sir, your appreciation of the Prime Minister's 3 main points. If there is an attack, there will be a response. India has called out Pakistan's nuclear bogey and no distinction between state and non-state actors.
Thank you, Gaurav, for having me on your show. You know, I think what the PM said today is a continuation of what he said on the 12th. On the 12th, when he spoke at Adampur, he laid out the various parameters of India's new national security doctrine. Today, he has amplified it more by making it absolutely clear that this is the new normal. You know, when he says Operation Sindoor, ye Hindustan, ye Bharat ka Raudra Roop hai, that this is what India will do henceforth. So he's put the bar that any terrorist action will be met not with restraint, not with high moral ground, but will be met with a decisive action. And then you have the other 2 components, key of which is, of course, that we will no longer fall for Pakistan's nuclear bluff. So I think if you see the 2 speeches in conjunction, what you have today are the parameters of India's national security doctrine, that going forward, Pakistan is on notice. Pakistan will now have to ensure, if it wants to live peacefully, that there is no terror module which it is part of any of its terror organizations that carries out any terror attacks. If it does, which means Pakistan is looking for a scrap and Pakistan is looking to be punished. Because now there is no obfuscation. You know, it's absolutely crystal clear. Any terror attack, and there is no distinction between terrorists and government. It will be seen as Pakistan. No non-state actor or state actor. It will be seen as Pakistan itself. So if Pakistan wants to face those consequences, it's welcome to give it a try. But I think the Prime Minister has shown his determination, and the Indian Armed Forces have also shown their determination of what they are capable of, irrespective of Pakistan's nuclear weapons, Chinese platforms, and different kinds of technology which they thought they had.
Professor Brahmachilani, all ambiguity removed, and does this show India's strength? Because, it's not just Pakistan. A Pakistan that's backed by China, that does not want to see a strong India, armed by Turkey, and not just through their drones. And yet, as the Prime Minister said, all it took was 22 minutes to get Pakistan down on its knees and beg for a ceasefire. Professor Chilani.
You're absolutely right. I think it was a strong speech by the Prime Minister, but it was a speech largely directed at the domestic audience. The Prime Minister is seeking to combat the growing domestic perception that he yielded to external pressure and abruptly called off the brief military operation against Pakistan just when Indian forces had gained the upper hand on the battlefield. As you have been reporting, Gaurav, repeatedly, that the turning point in Operation Sindoor came on the morning of May 10th, when the Indian military hit major Pakistani air bases, including Noor Khan, which is located near the army headquarters, the Prime Minister's office, and Pakistan's nuclear command. At this point, India had seized the battlefield initiative. Yet, just a few hours later, a ceasefire was accepted. So, given this background, this perception about yielding to foreign pressure is being reinforced, unfortunately, by Trump's remarks about how he brokered an India-Pak ceasefire, in fact, how he used the threat of trade sanctions to force India's hand. He has repeated those assertions multiple times. And so it's making Modi's task a bit more difficult because he's trying to present a national message to both to the domestic audience and to the international audience. But clearly, what Modi is seeking to say is that India now has drawn a line in the sand and is willing to pay Pakistan back in the same coin, not by exporting terror, but by imposing costs on Pakistan that are proportionate to its export of terrorism to India.
But aren't they disproportionate? Because it's not just targeting 9 terror bases, it's targeting Pakistan, from Pakistan-occupied Jammu Kashmir, the Skardu Air Base down to Bulari and that Malirkant radar station, bases across Pakistan. It's disproportionate response. And if I may, why should we buy, Dr. Tara Kartha and Professor Chilani, I'll come back to you on that. Why should we buy Donald Trump's, version of this thing when Donald Trump has a history of being economical with the truth? He's been called out thousands of times by the American media itself for being economical with the truth or bragging, and not delivering. Dr. Tara Kartha.
Actually, I think the government's narrative should include one simple fact, that we've just imposed reciprocal tariffs on the US. I mean, what trade? If he's going to talk about trade, this is the reality. I mean, that's what we did at the WTO. So, and honestly, if I were to break that up, I don't even know how it works. Where do you bring in trade sanctions or trade benefits, which I don't see Trump doing ever? Trade sanctions for terrorism, he's not interested. He's interested only in getting his narrative and getting trade benefits. That's one. Number two, the fact is that the fact that we have consistently and at each calculated step, it was so calculated. We will do this much and now you're ready to step back. We'll do this much and you're ready to step back. So it was, what shall I say? It was beautifully done in terms of, I have never seen it done in terms of this tight command and control. Now we have to get into the narrative, and I think we are falling behind there. For example, if where is the fact that Pakistanis have been arrested all over the world for terrorist acts, literally all over the world? Where is that data? Like I said, just in March this year, a bunch of Pakistanis were arrested in Spain, including women. This was a gang with women also involved.
Yes.
Then there was another one, I think, in Italy. There was a gang. So this data has to be brought out in a fashion which brings out the truth. It's not just us that Pakistan is attacking.
But
it's also the
if I may, I completely agree with you that we should continue to expose Pakistan. But if I may, Sandeep, why should we fall for the American narrative or seek American, appreciation for what we've done? We're a strong country. Even America hasn't targeted a nuclear weapon state. America also goes and bombs Afghanistan and Iraq, which barely have an air force to speak of. And here we are taking down American-made aircraft in Pakistan. We're taking down Swedish aircraft in Pakistan. We've decimated major air bases in Pakistan. We've called out or exposed the Chinese radars and air defense systems. Why are we seeking Western validation or saying, oh, they're not buying our narrative? Oh, we are so... Why? We've done it. We are proud of it. Our equipment is showing that. Sandeep.
Absolutely. Gaurav, as you said, Prime Minister Modi's new Modi doctrine, if you can call it that, it's that trident of three spears. Or a trident of 3 factors, which basically he says that there is going to be no distinction between a state actor and a non-state actor. That is something that the Pakistan army built up so assiduously. A dozen Pakistan army chiefs have built up the narrative that we had nothing to do with the terrorist groups, they're all non-state actors. The second most important thing is that he said that we are not going to be deterred by Pakistan's nuclear blackmail. And they've actually, called it out by attacking all of those bases that you mentioned, Chaklala, Sargoda, all of those places which have been used to host nuclear weapons. This is the first time in the history of nuclear weapons of the last 80 years, Gaurav, that one nuclear armed state has attacked another nuclear armed state with the Air Force. Of course, Pakistan fired first. They used ballistic missiles. Extremely irresponsible, and reckless, which is why we unleashed the Air Force on the 10th of May to carry out those strikes across Pakistan. But, Gaurav, at the end of the day, there is also a narrative that India must build. And while we've been talking about the military responses, it is fantastic. The military OODA loop, the observe, orient, decide and act loop, was becoming shorter and shorter as the operations progressed, from the first wave to the second to the third. But somewhere down the line, I think our narrative was failing. The OODA loop over there was actually becoming bigger and bigger. So while the military OODA loop was shrinking, it was the diplomatic and the narrative OODA loop that was actually widening. There was a lot of time between, the time that it took us to respond to, say, the United States and all of Trump's shenanigans, all of those statements. It took us a long time to come back on all of that and set the narrative right. And that, Gaurav, is the reason, as Dr. Chelani pointed out, that the Prime Minister is literally going out on the front foot and swinging out at Pakistan, putting the Modi doctrine out there for them to see. The fact is that, you're not going to be deterred by terrorism. And this is the most important thing, Gaurav, apart from the terror blackmail, the nuclear blackmail that he's called out. The fact is that today, there is no distinction between the state and the non-state in Pakistan. This is something the Pakistan military has built up, as I said, over decades, Gaurav. They always built up this plausible deniability. We have nothing to do, Mumbai has been bombed by a DGISI. We have nothing to do with this. They are non-state actors and all. All that stands shattered. And today, it is General Headquarters, Rawalpindi, that is in our bomb sites, Gaurav. And that is the big achievement that Operation Sindoor has
Professor
really
Chelani,
done.
absolutely. The nuclear bogey, has it been called out forever? If we can send in missiles today, we can send it next time. Would you agree that the Chinese air defense system, their honky 9Ps and their HQ-16s, their entire air defense system didn't really work if our missiles were going in one after the other? Yes, day one, we still need more clarity, but I'm talking about the May 10th response. Does that not show India was on top of the game? The West will never buy it. They would still look at us as, how dare brown people do better than the white people? They may try, but ultimately they will have to accept the truth sooner than later.
Are you asking me?
Yes, Professor Chelani. Go on, sir.
Yes. The fact is that objectively analyzing how rival weapon systems performed and how the two militaries performed, it's very clear that India gained air superiority over Pakistan. I don't think any serious military analyst in the world today will deny the fact that India gained air superiority over Pakistan in this very brief military operation. The issues are largely political. They are political because the whole discourse internationally has now become focused on India, Pakistan and Kashmir. And the central issue that triggered the military hostilities, cross-border terrorism, that is nowhere in the international discourse. And to make matters worse, within Pakistan, the army is getting a boost from this military operation. General Munir has been elevated to the rank of Field Marshal, the second time this has happened in Pakistan's history. And the irony is that just a couple of weeks ago, General Munir had remained a despised figure among many Pakistanis, especially Imran Khan supporters, because the army was behind the crackdown on Khan's party. Now, General Munir is being cast as a national savior. And every time the Americans have intervened in an India-Pakistan military conflict, the Pak military has got a boost at home. This happened in 1999. President Clinton helped end the India-Pak armed conflict in the Kargil sector. Ironically, we accepted the US intervention in 1999, just when the Paki intruders were running out of ammunition. But because Clinton intervened, his intervention helped to empower the then Pakistan Army Chief Pervez Musharraf, who went on to stage a coup. So like in 1999, the Pak military today has boosted its standing at home by holding its own against the more powerful India. So the flip side of India gaining military superiority on the battlefield is that because of the US intervention, or in whatever role the US played, the Pak military today is enjoying greater recognition, greater respect at home. And this is paradoxical given the fact that people in Pakistan increasingly were blaming the Pak army for the country's plight.
Yes. So that's interesting. Mr. Deveshar, is that also your appreciation? And does that mean that Imran Khan and his party and his supporters will accept Field Marshal Asim Munir being on top, because that in a way would be endgame Imran Khan? Either he gets exiled or Asim Munir will hang him like Zulfikar Ali Bhutto or have him shot dead like Benazir Bhutto. Clearly the two cannot live in the same country.
I'm afraid I'll have to disagree with Professor Chelani for two reasons. First of all, about the ceasefire. You see, I think, let's be very clear. What were our aims when we launched this operation? It was to take out the terror sites. I think repeatedly in the press conferences, the army made it very clear that we were targeting only the terror camps. Because when Pakistan responded, we hit their air bases. And then when they asked for peace, or sued for peace really, our objectives had been met. We had demolished the snake pits of Guritke and Bhalpur. So we accepted the ceasefire. I don't think it's a question of pressure. As far as President Trump is concerned, I think only President Trump knows what President Trump is going to come up with next. I think too much of importance is being given to him. I think the foreign EAM has clarified that this was purely a bilateral thing. So I do not accept about the pressure on the PM or the speech in Bikaner was meant for the domestic audience. I think it was meant for across the border. Now, the second thing about the point about this
Pakistan Army, Imran Khan.
In fact, I think we should look at it. I feel the other way. I feel that it is a weakened Asim Munir who has given himself the title of Field Marshal to cover up for their loss, to cover up for their defeat. You see, if it was a victory, then the air chief should have become a marshal of the Air Force. It was an air battle after all. It wasn't a land force. How come Munir has become? So he's basically covering up the fact that it is an unpopular army, especially in Pakistan, in Punjab. They are facing problems in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which they can't do anything about. And as far as India is concerned, I think strengthening the army, if Professor Chelani feels that the army is being strengthened, I think is a very good thing. Whenever the army comes out nakedly in the open, you can be rest assured that Pakistan will have major fissures. Because
very interesting point. Go on, sir.
The barriers, the bumpers which are there when civilians are in power will no longer be there. And the army just knows either black or white. So if the army has been, I don't think so. I think Munir is actually in a very weak position. He's covering it up by becoming Field Marshal. But if you think that the army has been strengthened in Pakistan, I think great. Let them get even more strengthened. It'll do us much better in the long term.
Professor Chelani, quick 30-second response. Then I'll bring in Dr. Tarakartha and Sandeep Punithan. Go on, sir.
Gaurav, I didn't say the Pak army has been strengthened. I said its standing at home has been boosted. Whether we like it or not, the Pakistanis are beginning to look at the Pak army now in different light than they were just days ago because of this 3-day military operation in which both India and Pakistan were involved. And if our objective was only to take out some terror camps, what is all this talk about no distinction between state and non-state actors, no distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. What is all this talk about that we will not differentiate between the terrorists and those who are behind it? Those behind it are the Pak military. So why did we start the operation? So why did we start this Operation Sindoor by only targeting 9 terror camps? Though we gave Pakistan many days notice, 15 days notice, they emptied most of these terror camps. We knew all that, and yet we began this operation differentiating between the state and non-state actors, and then now we are claiming that we met our objective by hitting some terror camps.
Plus 13 Pakistan Air Force bases, including Noor Khan in Rawalpindi, plus the radars at Pasroor and Malir Cantonment, plus Bulari, plus Skardu. 13 air bases of Pakistan Army decimated. I'm told Dr. Tara Kartha, he cannot use Sargodha for some more time. The Prime Minister, tongue firmly in cheek, said Rahim Yar Khan remains in ICU. So there is no distinction, is there, between terrorists and their sponsors? This is perhaps the highest cost that has ever been imposed on radical Islamist terror in Pakistan, Dr. Tara Kartha.
Absolutely. I would love someone to estimate those costs and then weigh it against the IMF loan that they got. So it's going to be huge, right? Because it's not easy putting these assets back. But the point I'm trying to make here is that if you want this, we've got hyphenated. This is one problem which the US has done. It's not in our perception. As far as we are concerned, there's no such thing. But these guys are trying to do this whole hyphenation stuff. The way to break that is to get that terrorism, the whole, perception management has to be done again. We did it once. I think we can do it again because we're talking the truth. We are not making up stories.
Yes.
The truth. So that aspect, I think we need to highlight. But I think the Prime Minister has every right to say he's made a doctrine and he's repeating it just how many kilometers from Pakistan. This is a message to Pakistan. I don't think the villagers of Bikaner would know very much about, the nuances of the doctrine that he's putting out. And it's a gutsy one.
ये आक्रोश नहीं है, समर्थ भारत का रौद्र रूप है. Sandeep, the Prime Minister is making it very clear. This is not revenge. These strikes were not retribution. This is India's fight for justice. And your take, because if Asim Munir is strengthened within, look at the attacks that are taking place on Pakistan Army. Their trucks are being stalled in Sindh. That entire Cholistan controversy is back with the diversion of Indus waters, and I'll come to Indus waters in just a moment. The problems he's facing in Baluchistan, the problem he's facing in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, he's riding a tiger. He either will end up in the belly of the tiger of terror, or he'll flee the country like some of his predecessors, Sandeep.
Absolutely, Gaurav. Whichever way you look at it, it never ends well for these military dictators. And I'm calling Asim Munir possibly the fifth Pakistani military dictator in the last 7 decades, because he is one. By elevating himself to a field marshal and creating this crisis, this whole thing, the Pakistan military thrives on these crises. It is a parasite. It feeds off fear. It feeds off warfare, it feeds off crisis. And this is exactly what Asim Munir did. As Professor Chelani mentioned about a month back, he was one of the most despised men in Pakistan. And today he's used that crisis to, catapult himself to the world stage. But Gaurav, we have seen the Pakistan military for far too long. It always, to quote Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park, the first one, where, he says, oh, it starts like this, it's ooh and it's ah and all that. But, where it ends, there's running, there's shouting, there's dying. And that's the way it ends for all of these dictators. You know what happened to all of those dictators. I don't have to repeat it, Gaurav. And, to my mind, it's Asim Munir is someone with, a severe case of osteoporosis who's firing heavy caliber weapons from his shoulder. I mean, how long can his body really take this kind of, game that he's playing? So it never ends well for the dictators, Gaurav.
Let me come to the Brahmastra now. The new Narendra Modi doctrine also makes it very clear. Blood and water will not flow together. No business as usual with Pakistan. No terror and talks together. The only conversation, if at all, with Pakistan will be on the recovery of Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this, first listen into the Prime Minister, and then I will tell you why India's military messaging, strategic messaging, and diplomatic messaging. It's not a T20 match, ladies and gentlemen. This is the long haul, and in the long haul, we have money, they are beggars, and beggars cannot fight wars on borrowed money, even if China and Turkey continue to fund them. The question is, how long? Listen into Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
पाकिस्तान के साथ न ट्रेड होगा न टॉक। अगर बात होगी तो सिर्फ पाकिस्तान के कब्जे वाले कश्मीर की, पीओके की। और अगर पाकिस्तान ने आतंकियों को एक्सपोर्ट करना जारी रखा तो उसको पाई पाई के लिए मोहताज होना होगा। पाकिस्तान को भारत के हक का पानी नहीं मिलेगा। भारतीयों के खून से खेलना पाकिस्तान को महंगा पड़ेगा। ये भारत का संकल्प है और दुनिया की कोई ताकत हमें इस संकल्प से डिगा नहीं सकती है।
दुनिया की कोई ताकत हमें इस संकल्प से डिगा नहीं सकती है। Professor Chilani, I once again want to start by asking you about one, terror and talks can't happen together, point one. Point two, no trade, point three, blood and water cannot flow together. Nobody can shake us from this point. Your appreciation of this statement?
I agree with all 3 points, but we have to translate our rhetoric into action. I have been advocating the building of riparian leverage for more than 20 years now. I've been saying that riparian leverage can be more potent than even the nuclear weapons option. Now, the Prime Minister 9 years ago, almost 9 years ago, said that blood and water cannot flow together. Now he's repeating the same line, but for nearly 9 years, since 2016, when he first made that announcement, that statement, what has India done to create infrastructure in the Indus Basin, to create riparian leverage? Unfortunately, in the 9 years have passed without any new project being initiated. Hydro infrastructure projects take years to complete, and therefore we cannot lose time. So just talking, the problem is that if we just talk, we will be handing Pakistan an emotive card. In the last few days, there have been mass protests in Sindh, number of killings, hundreds of people injured over water. The people in Sindh are protesting canal construction in Punjab, Pakistani Punjab, as well as corporate farming. Police have fired on unarmed protesters. And these are mass protests which have not been reported widely in Indian media. Yes. This shows that when you talk, but you don't translate your talk into action, you might hand your enemy an emotive card. They might blame India for the parched conditions in Sindh and Balochistan. They'll say it's India that is holding back the water.
Yes, they may seek to, but wouldn't that, Mr. Deveshar, actually make Asim Munir more unpopular because he wants those corner plots in that Cholistan desert? It's the Pakistan army that wants to corner, thousands and thousands of acres of land. That is why they're diverting river, and that is why Sindh and Punjab and Pakistan will be at war.
You see, the protests in Sindh on the construction of the 6th canal predate what happened in Pahalgam and India holding the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. It was somewhere in March, earlier, or probably February, when Mariam Nawaz and Asim Munir organized that thing for the Cholistan Desert Development, 1.2 million acres. But there is no water in the Indus for Punjab to take out 6 more canals. And the fact that India continues to hold the treaty in abeyance despite the cessation of hostilities just shows the resolve and the determination. And I think the first thing that the government is doing now is that the residual water of the Ravi and the Satluj, which continue to flow into Pakistan, despite the fact that we had 100% control over those rivers, needs to stop. And I think something major and quickly is being done on the Satluj. Ravi has already been done. I think Satluj is being done. Even in the western rivers, where Ratle and Kishanganga are there, I mean, I don't know the full details, but I think a lot more will be heard about it in the future time. So I think the important thing is the treaty is being held in abeyance. And Prime Minister had made it very clear that, and all the other non-kinetic measures equally, are not affected by the cessation of hostilities, the agreement which was reached on 10th of May. But that is something which is going to hurt Pakistan in the long run. It is not this quick fire missiles and drones, but stoppage or holding the water in abeyance, releasing it at our own sweet will, stopping it at our own sweet will, not sharing data, not informing Pakistan about flooding, is the one that is going to hurt Pakistan the longest. And the real cost of terrorism for Pakistan, they will begin to realize very soon, because the early Kharif season sowing is going to begin very shortly.
And the pain is already being felt. They may seek to blame India, but in this interconnected world, facts come out. There are journalists in Pakistan who are asking some questions. There are journalists overseas. The Western media is biased against India. It's almost like the white man who's not very happy with Indians doing so well, taking an independent foreign policy decision. But that's exactly what India will continue to do in the times to come, irrespective of what Donald Trump may think. If he's a friend, he has to be a friend in need. If not, then there can be a transactional relationship between two countries. And that is where India, of course, Dr. Tarak Artha, last 30 seconds on this part of the show. India also has a couple of aces up our sleeve. He needs us as much as we need him.
Oh, absolutely. And, to just add to this Indus water, you've already started filling Bagliar. And the Kharif season is already underway. Next will be Kishanganga. The pain is going to be immediate. And I think if that, like Mr. Devasha said, those protests were happening, you're going to add to it, simply in that. In fact, actually, the rest of the US establishment is pretty okay with us in the sense we've got so much. There is a huge amount of cooperation going on. So it's not as if anybody is doing anyone any favors. It is not like that at all. These are bilateral exercises where they have a stake in the Indian Ocean and we have a very important role to play. So it's Trump's political posturing aside, I think we are pretty okay with the US establishment as of now. So that's the reality, I think.
I will let that be the last word on this part of the show, but this is a story we'll be, reporting very frequently in the days and weeks ahead. Many, many thanks to all our guests for joining me on this very interesting conversation. Again, a major anti-red terror operation. Security forces have successfully killed top Maoist commander Basav Raju, also known as Nambala Keshava Rao. Now, the operation was called Operation Black Forest. It was meticulously planned for over 21 days. Now, these anti-Naxal operations, they unfolded across the dense and rather hostile terrain of Bijapur, Narayanpur, Sukma, several districts of Chhattisgarh. It was launched with the coordination and coordinated efforts of the DRG, of the Cobra Commandos, and of the Central Reserve Police Force. An operation that witnessed, ladies and gentlemen, the deployment of over 5,000 troops, 5,000 troops for over 21 days. They surrounded the Koraigutta Hills, and this is a red terror stronghold. Look at the kind of mines that were found and diffused and controlled detonations were carried out, the weapons that were located. This is one of the strongest bases of the Maoists of the red terror. There are 5 strategic directions from where these operations were mounted, reinforcements were called in, drones were used for surveillance, helicopters for quick movement of men and material. The key targets, 4 Naxal factories, they were neutralized. Destruction of multiple underground bunkers, intelligence support came through, surveillance, helicopters. One of the major threats detected during the operation was a massive 450 kilogram IED, an improvised explosive device, and that highlights the scale of the Naxal preparedness. Searches that were carried out, and watch this, searches that were carried out revealed food, grain, 12,000 kilograms of rations. Now, this is how long the Naxals plan to hold out. 12,000 kilograms. They could have held on state forces for over 2 years without having to look out. Now, this Operation Black Forest marks a significant blow to Naxal infrastructure and showcases the precision and coordination of India's internal security agencies that are moving forward with one motive, one lakshya, as they say, to destroy Red Terror strongholds, the last 2 districts of the Red Terrorists, and fulfill the Union Home Minister Amit Shah's pledge that India will be Red Terror free by March 2026. Jitendra Bahadur Singh brings us this report.
April 6, 2010. A Central Reserve Police Force team was ambushed. Tadmetla Forest, Dantewada, Chhattisgarh. 76 CRPF personnel were killed in the ambush. This was the worst ambush of security forces by left-wing extremists in the country's history, resulting in the deaths of 76 CRPF personnel. The Maoists laid a well-planned ambush targeting a team of CRPF personnel returning after a long-range area domination mission. The pre-dawn attack was planned and executed with military precision, with Maoists occupying higher ground and opening fire at the CRPF personnel from multiple sides. India Today reported the biggest setback to India's war on left-wing extremism.
Headlines Today also spoke to the peace negotiator who's been trying to bring about some sort of a ceasefire so that the Maoists and the representatives of the government perhaps could sit together and thrash out an understanding. Swami Agnivesh told Headlines Today's political editor Javed Ansari that he had conveyed the Home Minister's message to Azad and had got positive feelers from the Maoist spokesperson.
Dr. Manmohan Singh had described them as the biggest threat to India's internal security.
There have been heavy casualties inflicted recently on our security forces by the Naxalite groups. There are also indications of yet more offensive action by these groups. The problem of left-wing extremism is indeed a complex one.
Security forces believed Nambala Keshava Raju or Basava Raju was the key planner of the Chintalnar massacre of security forces. He was again suspected to be the mastermind of the 2013 attack in the Jhiram Valley, where a convoy of senior Congress leaders was targeted. Senior Congress leaders, including Vidya Charan Shukla, Mahendra Karma, and Gopi Madhwani, were among 27 killed in the Maoist attack.
This is the biggest internal security challenge for both the centre and the 7 main affected states. The Maoists had threatened to avenge the killing of their leader Azad. They attacked with impunity across the Red Corridor. Clear, coordinated attacks in Jharkhand, in Chhattisgarh, and in Orissa. Is the lack of coordination between the centre and the states hampering the anti-Naxal operations?
Union Home Minister Amit Shah, post-2019, tasked security forces to hit at the roots of left-wing extremism and ordered establishment of multiple company operating bases in districts that had been cleared of red terror. The focus shifted from containing to eliminating red terror. The security forces also mounted the bigger intelligence-based operations to neutralize terrorists in their strongholds. Undeterred by two milestones being missed in the past, security forces armed with the latest night vision devices, weapons, drones and helicopters for speedy movement, strongholds were identified and neutralized. The big success came with intelligence inputs of Basavaraju holding a meeting with over 40 top Maoist leaders in Ambujmad region of Chhattisgarh. Security forces mounted a multi-pronged offensive, neutralizing Basavaraju on the night intervening Tuesday and Wednesday. 27 Maoist leaders and cadre were killed in action.
Breaking news coming in. It's a big win for our forces yet again in the anti-Naxal war. Naxals have been killed in Chhattisgarh operations. In fact, top Naxals, Basavraj, who are also among those who've been killed by our forces. Slain Naxal Basavraj had 1 crore bounty on him. Remember, the backbone of Naxals has been broken in Chhattisgarh, and it's a huge milestone in Naxal Mukt Bharat push.
And on Thursday, security forces announced his second-in-command, Sajja Venkata Nageshwara Rao, also known as Rajanna, Yesanna and Naveen, originally from Jandrapet village in Chiramala Mandal of Bapatala district. Security forces believe this truly is endgame red terror in line with the Home Minister's March 2026 deadline. Bureau Report, India Today.